Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. It's our Football Friday, our last Football Friday of the season, as we take a look at Super Bowl 59 on the Mike Francesa channel on the Bet Rivers Network on YouTube. And remember, as you get ready for the game and get ready for your wages and everything else, bet on the big game with Bet Rivers Sportsbook and earn a chance to be one of the 5,900 players. That's right, not 59, 5,900 players to win prizes in the big game 59K bonus bet giveaway. Check out the Bet Rivers app for full details. You know, before I get to the game, a couple things. Number one, I was at Fairfield yesterday. I had to see my son, but also I was speaking at Fairfield yesterday, and I stayed for the game. Went to the game with the president and with Harrison and with Bob Usler, who does the Fairfield games, a lot of them on television. And Fairfield's had a rough year. They got cherry picked. You know, their two best players wound up at Oklahoma and Northwestern. They got bought. Maris came in first place in the league, so he knew it was going to be a tough game. Fairfield played it well. Game was tied at half. Fairfield got a little lead, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Maris takes the lead late in the game. They had a chance to they got up 4, but then they started turning the ball over, missing free throws, missed the front end of 2 1-and-1s, missed a ton of free throws, but there were a couple of crazy calls at the end of the game, all went against Fairfield. I'm not going to debate the call. It's not worth it. So the bottom line is Maris is going to the line with a couple of seconds left in the game. Game tied for 2. Guy tanks both. Now they missed the front end 1-and-1, front end of 1-and-1, missed 1 of 2, and then missed 2. So they had a chance for 8 free throws to make 1 down the stretch. So the game is tied. Fairfield calls timeout. Emotional building. They're all over the officials. The place is going crazy because let's be honest, they got a couple of bad whistles down the stretch. Be that as it may. Emotionally charged building. Tight game. Game was feisty. Fairfield's playing well. They inbound the ball and they call timeout. They're going to inbound the ball with 1.2 left. And I'm like, all right, let's get ready for overtime. And Harrison's like, this guy can maybe. I'm like, Harrison, what are you telling me? He's going to have to throw the shot up from like 70 feet away. I mean, they got to inbound it under their basket. And we're sitting down right courtside, but I'm sitting right even with the basket. They're down, inbounding under the far basket. They inbound the ball. They get it to their little guard, who's a feisty player, Perry, and he takes a dribble and flings it. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, that's short. And then I look in amazement as it just clears the front rim, swish, from 70 feet to win the game. I mean, the place, they're pouring onto the court. They're all on top of each other. People are just going around, with their wide-eyed look like, what did we just see? It was you go there not expecting anything, and you get to see a shot that's one of the amazing shots I've ever seen to end the ball game. I mean, unbelievable. I mean, he hits this clean. He shoots it with form from 70 feet, and it goes in and twish, right through. Amazing. I'm sure you've seen it by now, either on social media or on Sports Center. I mean, I'm sure it was one of their first highlights. It was just crazy, absolutely crazy. So a wild finish to my day at Fairfield yesterday. On the way home, Harrison came home for the weekend, so we were driving home, and I said, what's the news on Eli? So he's looking, and he said, not yet, but I think he said, I saw somebody do an interview today and said Eli's not getting in. I said, all right. I said, the guy probably knows. He goes, yeah, it was one of the guys who was a voter, blah, blah, blah. I said, hey, I'm sure they know. Everyone seemed to know beforehand what the information was, so I'm sure Eli. I said, I'm disappointed. And he didn't get in. And now you're seeing a lot of he had special moments, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer, or he did that, and I could not disagree more. Could not disagree more. I watched Eli play his entire career, and I know that Eli and I have always had a very good relationship. Okay, I've done a lot of events with Eli. I've done probably a gazillion interviews with Eli. I know Eli very well. I've always had a very good relationship with him. He's a terrific guy. Um, that's not what this is about. There's plenty of guys. Okay, I love Bernie Williams. I would never say Bernie was going to make the Hall of Fame. All right, and Bernie had a great career, and he was an incredibly clutch player. But I wouldn't say he's a Hall of Famer. I think Eli, because of the position that he played and what he brought to that position with the Giants, and I understand late in his career the record tailed off and it wound up being a 500 record in the regular season. So, he didn't make All Pro, and he did this. But tell me this: how many of those quarterbacks who make All Pro played in that building, which is one of the worst buildings? And always think of this with Giant quarterbacks. They play in one of the worst buildings to throw in the entire league. They play in tough conditions. They play in swirling winds in October and November and December. It's not like playing in a dome. It's not like playing in Florida or playing in California. All right. If you don't take that into account, for anybody who's played that position for the Giants or the Jets, you're out of your mind. It makes a big difference. On top of that, give me all the great players on offense he played with. He played with some terrific defensive players and some great pass rushers. Okay? But give me the guys he played with on offense who were great players. Start listing them. Now you got a guy who is top 10 all time, and now this is always ever changing, but went into the season top 10 all time in touchdown passes, top 10 all time in fourth quarter comebacks, top 10 in different statistics. Durable, tough, classy, never embarrassed the franchise, never missed a game, was always there, had a knack for coming back from behind. And then you have this postseason history, which is not just another postseason history. There are a handful of quarterbacks who are two-time Super Bowl MVPs. They are all legendary players. You have Starr, who was the winner of the first two Super Bowls, the first two Super Bowl MVPs, prolific winner in every way, of the greatest franchise, I think, in the history of the NFL. Tom Brady, the most prolific winner of all time. Mahomes, who is trying to eclipse Brady and has a chance to move closer on Sunday. You have the great Joe Montana, who's the best Super Bowl quarterback of all time, bar none. There's nobody close. In terms of the performance in the game, nobody has ever approached what Joe Montana did at quarterback. His numbers are so much better than everybody else's, it's not even a discussion. And Terry Bradshaw, who won 4 Super Bowls in 4 tries and won 2 Super Bowl MVPs. The back two. First winner was Franco. Second winner was Swan. Those 2 games were won with defense. The last 2 were Bradshaw. They were won with offense. So you have Starr, you have Brady, you have Mahomes, you have Bradshaw, you have Montana, and you have Eli Manning. 2-time Super Bowl MVP. Eli Manning didn't have a run once like some quarterbacks do and have a good postseason. Hey, got hot one year in the postseason. Eli Manning did it twice and did it in incredible style. He twice changed history by beating the dominant team. Do you know what the Patriot record is? Do you know what the Bill Belichick record is and what the Brady record is if you take out Manning and the Giants and give them 2 victories in those games, including the undefeated season? He beat both of those teams from behind in the fourth quarter. He went into the fourth quarter of both those games trailing those great teams and beat both of them. And he beat both of them. Go look at his fourth quarter numbers. He beat both of them. He made play after play after play. But not only that, in those 2 years, he went 5-0 on the road. 4 times brought his team back from behind in the fourth quarter of those games. 2 in the Super Bowl, 1 in Dallas, 1 in Green Bay. He beat Dallas on the road, and they got off to a terrible start in that game, and he kept them together. He beat Favre in the cold in Green Bay. He beat Rodgers in Green Bay. He beat San Francisco in San Francisco on a day where he took a beating that a lot of quarterbacks would have quit on. He got sacked 6 times and must have gotten hit hard 15 times. And 15 might be light. They beat the heck out of him that day. And he kept coming back for more and led his team to a victory. This guy went on the road in those years and won 5 playoff games in San Francisco, in Dallas, in Green Bay, in Tampa, in Green Bay again, and then topped it off by twice beating the Patriots and Tom Brady. And that's not enough for you. He didn't do this once. He didn't have some fluky year. And there are a lot of great quarterbacks who are going into the Hall of Fame or already in the Hall of Fame on roller skates who either A, didn't win a Super Bowl, or B, won 1 Super Bowl. He won 2 Super Bowls and was the MVP of both and brought his team from behind in the fourth quarter of both games. And he beat Favre, and he beat Rodgers, and he beat Romo and the Cowboys, and he beat Garcia, and he beat Alex Smith in San Francisco. Those 2 years did everything. He had in those 2 years, he had 15 touchdowns and 2 intercepts in the playoffs. It wasn't one fluky year. It was twice. If he did it once, we wouldn't be talking about him making the Hall of Fame. He didn't do it once. He did it twice. You do something twice, it's not a lucky. He always was good coming from behind, and in those games, he was at his best coming from behind. His career isn't good. It's extraordinary. It's special. It's a Hall of Fame career. Absolutely. It's a remarkable career. And when you line up with those guys and all other 5 are in the Canton on roller skates, that's where he belongs. And he should have gone in yesterday. Now to the game. Bet Rivers line this morning has a movement. Kansas City's won. Does that mean the Eagle money is flooding in? No, it means it's trickling in. I don't think the game ends up pick. I think it ends up 1.5. Is it hard to go against Kansas City? Yes, very. I have not gone against Kansas City in a Super Bowl. I've picked Andy and Mahomes every time they've been there. Now, I'm picking against them this year. Not because I think there's anything wrong with them. There's not. Except for one thing. The offensive tackles bother me. And I think that matchup, when they got beat by Tampa, got beat by the pass rush. Their offensive line fell apart. If they get beat this time, they're not going to get beat by Barkley. They're not going to get beat by Hurts. They're not going to get beat by Brown. They're not going to get beat by that big offensive line. They're going to get beat by the defensive front of the Eagles. The Eagle defense is good, and it's deep, and it's good on all 3 levels. And they got linebackers who can cover, and they got guys in the secondary who can cover, and they have people who can tackle, and they have a guy on the defensive line who is an absolute monster. I know he's been sick this week, but Carter is a monster, and he's young. keep your eye on Carter, keep your eye on Chris Jones. They will have a huge impact on this game. Both of them. But the Eagles have a problem. I mean, the Chiefs have a problem on that offensive line. The Eagles have a little bit of a health issue on their own offensive line, but I think they're going to be okay. I think they're healthier. From what I hear, they're healthier, and they have a great offensive line. The Chiefs' interior offensive line is terrific. If they have Thuney playing at guard, their guards and center are as good as anybody's in the leagues. It's their tackles that's the problem. So they asked Thuney to go from being an all-pro guard to being a mediocre tackle and try and play his blind side in this game. That is, that's what they're asking him to do. And to go up against guys who can put pressure on inside, can put pressure on outside, move guys around. They have 4 legitimate guys who can get to the quarterback, the Eagles. That's without any gimmicks, any blitzes, anything else. That's just 4 guys getting there. Nolan Smith is looking to get a sack in every single game off the edge. Carter inside. Milton Williams, who does not get a lot of attention. You might not hear that name a lot. Pay attention because he has been tremendous down the stretch of the season for the Eagles. They're going to put a lot of pressure inside, where the Chiefs are not now is not as good as they were because of the fact that Thuney had to move to left tackle, and they are woefully weak at the tackle spots. Now Andy knows this, and that's why you're going to see them using a lot of quick stuff, a lot of 3-step drop, try to get those crossings, those shallow crosses and those slants going. By the time Mahomes' foot hits the ground on the 3rd step, the ball's gone. Whether it's to Worthy, whether it's to Hollywood Brown, whether it's to take your pick. They have plenty of receivers. They now have plenty of receivers, and Worthy has really stepped up. Since Hollywood Brown came back, that really freed up Worthy. But they have dependable weapons now in the passing game. There's no question. They're going to move the football. I'm not saying the Chiefs aren't, but what's going to happen is that pass rush is going to put Mahomes under duress. A big key for the Eagles, though, is not to let him get outside containment. Pressure him, hit him, make him get rid of the ball, but keep him from moving up in the pocket with inside pressure and keep him from getting outside. Containment's going to be key on both of these quarterbacks. Now, Kansas City, is going to blitz. And Hurts isn't great against the blitz. But Mahomes has been shaky when he's seen a lot of pressure, and he's seen plenty of pressure in these playoffs. And the Bills didn't get a lot of pressure. The Eagles are built to bother them the way Houston bothered them. Not that they have as good of people on the edges, they don't, but they have better people inside, led by Carter, who is an all-world player. You have 2 all-world players here. You have the most underrated player of this generation on offense or defense, which is Chris Jones. He has never gotten the credit he deserves. He is a absolute stone-cold first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the great players of this generation. And when they talk about Mahomes and they talk about Kelsey and they talk about Andy, they don't talk enough about Chris Jones and how important he is. Why? Because in the regular season, sometimes you don't notice him that much because he doesn't have to do it, and he doesn't. He takes some time off. He takes some plays off. He takes some weeks off. But in the playoffs, he's there every single time, and he's there every fourth quarter. And who's been the best pass rusher in the playoffs this year? Well, in terms of overall pressures, winning his matchup, Chris Jones. Who's got the sacks? Smith. Who's got the sacks? But who's put the most pressure on? Jones. He is a force. Carter is a absolute monster. They are loaded on that line. To me, that's what has kept Andy up the last 10 days. Guys, we can't have these Eagles wreck the game here. And we're vulnerable here. They're going to do things to keep us vulnerable here. And they got people that can get to the quarterback. And the Chiefs are weaker inside because Thuney's outside, and they're not good outside. They're woefully weak at right tackle. He's a walking penalty flag. At left tackle, Thuney's trying, but he's not a big-time left tackle. You're going to beat him with speed. And then they're going to beat you with brute, blunt force inside. And the reason the Rams didn't score, the reason the Rams, in my mind, did not score on the Eagles in that playoff game when they could have won it was because there was a delay after the Nakua play on the sideline. And it allowed Carter, who was completely gassed, to get his breath. And what did he do? He got a sack on third down and he wrecked the play on fourth down. If they could have kept the clock moving and they could have got back to the line of scrimmage and kept him sucking air on the sideline, they could have scored. But when he got back and got his breath, he wrecked the game. As I've told you many times, 3 things you have to do to win this championship. You got to have a guy who can take the ball with 2 minutes left and drive it for a win. They both can do that. Mahomes does it better than anybody almost in history. You got to have the ability to play the 4-minute game, to be able to run the clock out. Kansas City is masterful at that, even without the great back. Obviously, the Eagles are built to do that. And what usually happens is Barkley breaks one. And the third thing is fourth quarter pass rush. You have to have fourth quarter pass rush. Because if you don't, you're going to get beat. And remember, the Chiefs have come from behind in all these victories. They have been at times within a couple of plays of losing control of the game. And they've come back and won these games, all 3 of them from behind. And it would not surprise me if they did that again. But here is what the Eagles have to do. They have to get their hands on the ball with a lead with a couple of minutes left and be able to run the clock out. There's 2 ways to beat the Chiefs. Get up 2 scores or have the ball and run the clock out. Because if you give him the ball and he's inside 1 score in the last 2 minutes, he's going to win the game. You played right into his hands. That's all he wants. And he's going to win the game. Because he's great. Andy's great, and he's great in those situations. Absolutely great. I have forget all the nonsense about the officiating, which I hope is not an issue in this game because we're all sick of it with the Chiefs. They have been so incredibly fortunate. It's been I don't think this is any big conspiracy. I think it's just the luck of the draw, but they have been incredibly lucky. And every bounce, every call has gone their way. If you don't see that, you haven't watched the games. Hopefully, that's not an issue this week. These teams are incredibly evenly matched. I think if you took it pound for pound, it's very close. They both have a lot of good football players on both sides of the ball. That's why they're here. Does Andy have an edge? Yes, because listen, Sirianni's still proving himself. Andy is on his way to immortality. And he is a great late game play caller. A bold one, a confident one, and a creative one. And he will have had the play ready. And you'll hear Mahomes after he executes it say, "Oh, yeah, we went over that Saturday night. This is what we were going to do." They've gone over everything. They will have the right personnel in the right spot, running the right route against the right coverage. That's who they are. They don't beat themselves in these spots ever. And the other teams continue to beat themselves in these spots. Not, having an extra lineman in the game on the goal line and not reporting, 12 men on the field, all different things, false starts, letting the play clock run. Kansas City doesn't do any of that. And that's a big advantage when the first thing you don't do is make mistakes in big spots. That's one of the reasons why they win all these close games. I mean, 17 straight one-score wins is absurd. It's almost hard to fathom. I have a hard time picking against Kansas City. Hard time. And I'm not rooting. My brother John is a huge Eagle fan. He has been. He's not like a fair weather Eagle fan. How did he become an Eagle fan? When we were kids, and John's, older than I. He's 6.5 years older than me, and his birthday's coming up. As a matter of fact, happy birthday. His birthday's tomorrow. My older brother is 6.5 years older than me, or 6 and change older than me. And when we were young, his favorite player was Roman Gabriel. He's always been a big football fan, and a big baseball fan, and his favorite player is Roman Gabriel. When Roman Gabriel was traded to the Eagles, he became an Eagle fan. Then Dick Vermeil showed up, and he liked Vermeil, and he loved Wilbert Montgomery, who was Vermeil's first big running back. Vermeil's always had big running backs, and he was Vermeil's first big running back in Philly. And he became an Eagle fan, and he's stayed an Eagle fan his whole life, since the 60s. So he's been an Eagle fan through thick and thin and everything else. Just like Harrison actually became a Chief fan because of Charles, which was pre these guys. And so he didn't jump on the bandwagon. He was there before the bandwagon and has been a Chief fan through all this. And he's a terrible Chief fan because he's a terrible winner. And he keeps winning. So everyone's sick of him walking around with his Chief stuff and, we can't lose, we can't lose, we can't lose, which is what he does. So, but John has always been a big Eagle fan. I like Andy a lot personally. I've known him a long time. If you listen to me, he's used to come on the show all the time. So it's hard not to root for him, and I don't root against him. But I really believe that I see a flaw. Now, if the Chiefs come back and if the Chiefs are down 3 and Mahomes takes them and drives them for a touchdown and wins the game, I'm not going to be surprised. No one's going to be surprised. But I actually see a little flaw in their game with these tackles. And I think the Eagles match up really well with their defensive front. And I think that's the difference in the game. In what should be a very close, very good, very entertaining game, 27, 23, 28, 25. I mean, so one of those kind of games. It's going to be a one-score game, probably with lead changes in the fourth quarter. Hopefully we get that because you know what? We want that kind of entertaining game. I think these two teams can provide that. They're very equally matched. They have explosive players. I mean, the Eagles have explosive players. Hurts can use his legs all over the field. Barkley can score from anywhere on the field. Brown and Smith. I mean, Brown is, when he's not on his heavy pout, is a really good football player. The problem with him, he's always pouting. So that's the thing that bothers me about him. But is he a good player? Yeah, he's big, he's strong, he's a good blocker, he's a really good receiver. He, his numbers per route run are unbelievable. I mean, he's a very good player. And Smith, who's a little bit of a thing, is an explosive player. He's been an explosive player his whole life. They got a good tight end. They got a great offensive line. They're a good football team. They're a really good football team. And obviously the Chiefs started off with a Hall of Fame coach, a Hall of Fame quarterback, a Hall of Fame tight end, a Hall of Fame defensive tackle, probably a Hall of Fame kicker, a couple other All-Pros. McDuffie's great, great defensive coordinator. I mean, they have a lot going for them, which is why they're going for a three-peat. You got a chance to see history. History's hard. Every time the Pats were trying to make history. They failed. Most of the time, when these teams are trying to make history, it's too much. Will that bother the Chiefs? I don't think so. That's not what's going to beat them. I think what's going to beat them is they had to move Thuney outside and they really didn't want to. And I think that's going to come home to roost at both places because it's going to really give them a weaker link inside against those tackles, and they're going to get beat on the edge by Smith. And I think that's going to be the difference in the game. Whether they get a strip fumble, whether they get whether they knock them a little sideways and cause Mahomes some pain, whether they get a deflected ball. I just think their pass rush is going to be the biggest factor in the game. In a game that's so close. So close. I mean, that's why the line's won. I mean, these teams are very, very equal. They're both very solid teams. So I think we should be in for a good score, a good game. Kansas City don't blow anybody out, and they don't get blown out. Puts you where you want to be in the fourth quarter. In the fourth quarter, we're all going to be sitting there riveted to the game, hopefully, and we'll see where it comes. Can the Eagles do the things to not put the ball back in Mahomes' hand in the last 3 minutes and let him control the whole thing confidently as he works the clock down, heads towards the end zone, and you know what inevitably is going to happen? He's going to wind up there. If I was going to look for a player and say, wow, it's his day. You know what player's kind of stuck in my head all week? Hopkins. He's waited a long time for this. He's a good player. He's always had a lot of ability. You look for that guy who has been waiting for this moment. He's the one guy that I think about that I just can see him having a big day out of nowhere. And let's be honest, he's been lightly used. I could see that happening though. That's the guy that's kind of stuck in my head there. But I keep coming back to those Eagle defensive front with what they have there with Carter, who is a great player, already a great force in the league, and Williams, who has come on gangbusters, and Nolan Smith, who's could break a record. No one's ever had a sack in each of the 4 playoff games. He could do that. And I think he will get a sack. If you're into those things, I think he'll get a sack. I think Chris Jones will get a sack. I don't know if Carter will get a sack inside because he's going to be double teamed a lot. He's a little under the weather, and he might be the guy who stays at home in that middle there and absorbs the double team and does not get to the quarterback much. So I wouldn't go with him for sure, but I would think Jones will, and I would think that Smith will. As far as somebody getting intercepted, that's impossible to predict. I mean, I think people who try to predict guys getting interceptions is crazy. It's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, on offense, you know where the ball's being designed to go sometimes. I mean, defensively, who knows where the ball's going. But I think we should get a very good game. And as we said, I'm going to go with the Eagles 27-23. How's that? Bet on the big game with the Bet Rivers Sportsbook and earn a chance to be one of the 5,900 players to win prizes in the big game 59K bonus bet giveaway. Check out the Bet Rivers app for full details. Now, I will be with you Sunday night after the game. Be the first word on putting the season to bed. Let's see if we have our three-peat. Let's see if we have something else. What happened in the game, whatever the big plays were, whatever, I'll be there. So we will be there after the game. We'll be up right after the game, I promise you. As soon as they come off the podium, okay, and the confetti drops, we'll be down here doing a show. Now, Let's finish up with a couple of emails. Mon sent me some. Let's see what we got. Here we go. Okay. Remember to send them to Mike Francesa podcast at gmail.com. Sean, out of all the Super Bowls you've witnessed, who's been the best player you've ever seen in a Super Bowl? Montana's been the best player by far. Not even close. Not even close. Now, if you're asking me about one player in a given game, I don't think anybody ever had a better Super Bowl game than Phil Simms had in Pasadena. 22 out of 25 for 271 and 3 touchdowns. One pass was dropped. One was iffy. He really only missed one pass the entire day. 22 out of 25. How about playing the best game of your life on the biggest stage of your life? 22 out of 25 for 271, 3 touchdowns. Doesn't get any better than that. I don't think anybody's ever had a better day than Phil did in that Super Bowl. But as far as the best Super Bowl player ever, it's not even close, folks. Go, and this isn't to knock Tom Brady. Go look at Tom Brady's stats in the Super Bowl. Then go look at Joe Montana's stats. Joe Montana's quarterback rating is about 40 points higher than Tom Brady's. Joe Montana was so good in these games. They were like mismatches. All right. Ryan, are you surprised Peyton Manning hasn't gone into broadcasting? I don't think he has enough time. What hasn't Peyton Manning is on TV more than, a newscaster. He's on TV all the time. Whether he must have 40 commercials. He's always hosting something. Sunday, he's doing some kind of promotion where they're kicking the ball, he and Eli. They're always involved in some way. You never don't see him. You never go an NFL game without seeing 2 or 3 of his commercials. First of all, he happens to be great on TV. He happens to be great on commercials. But here's the thing. Where Peyton's good, where none of these guys are good, is he's good scripted. He's actually clever, where he is like an actor, where he can deliver lines. He has personality. He knows timing. Anyone can be an analyst and tell you what you saw as a play. I think he'd be actually not miscast because he and his brother do that thing on ESPN. I've never watched it because I'm watching the game. I'm interested in the game. I'm not interested in what they're saying during the game. I can listen to them anytime. I want to watch the game. So I don't want to hear them and make the game secondary. The game's always primary with me. The conversation's not primary. So they're successful with everything they touch. They have these production companies that are making a ton of money. I mean, everything they touch is gold. I mean, Peyton Manning's he's magical. He doesn't have to do it. I think one day, he could have his own franchise if he wants to be able to afford one. He'll be able to buy one. I mean, really buy one. And the guy is amazing. He really is. And he's got a great personality, and you can't knock him because he's great on the commercials. He does a great job. And he can host shows. I mean, the guy is very talented. He really is. Of the football players, by far the most talented guy on TV. Not even close. I mean, he actually got legitimate talent. Sean. I don't know if it's the same Sean, but I've often heard through the years you say the Hall of Fame is for dominant, special, all-time great players. Do you look at Eli Manning as a dominant player? I look at Eli Manning as a quarterback, which is the dominant position in the sport, which is unlike any other position in the sport. And he has changed the course of history in the NFL with his postseason performances. That's why I think he's a Hall of Famer. Also because that he didn't have a short career. He never missed a game. He was as durable as any quarterback who's ever played in the NFL. He was as classy. He never caused a day's trouble. He didn't play with great teams. He wasn't surrounded by 8 Hall of Famers, okay? And I'm not knocking anybody who was, but Troy Aikman, who I love and was a great player, It's 7 Hall of Famers with him. Terry Bradshaw had 8 Hall of Famers with him. Bart Starr had 10 Hall of Famers with him. Eli Manning didn't. He had 1. Strahan. He didn't have a bunch of Hall of Famers with him. Listen, I believe the Hall of Famers. I'm a hard marker. If Eli did not do something special, he did. He stopped a train. Not once, but twice. And he did it in front of me from behind in the fourth quarter. I can still remember Junior Seau, who was dying to win a championship, who I knew very well. One more stop after they took the lead in that game, and they couldn't stop Eli Manning. Think about it. He stopped that train, including an undefeated team that was unbeatable. Now, was Tuck great that day? Yes. Was their pass rush a huge factor? Yes. But again, at the end of the game, they were losing. They were down again in the fourth quarter, and they had to turn to Eli and say, win us the game. And he did. Not once, but twice. And has he made memorable plays? Yes. And not one or two. The Tyree play is one of the great plays of all time, getting out of the pass rush, which the Pats still complain about. Okay. Oh, we had him down. And then the catch by Tyree. And then how about the pass to Manningham? It's one of the great clutch throws in history. But then step in against the zero blitz and boom, touchdown. He made every play. He had ice water in his veins, and he didn't do it once. He did it twice, and he changed the history of the league with those wins. He stopped the train that no one else could stop. He didn't stop it once, he stopped it twice. And he won in Green Bay where nobody won. Nobody beat Favre in the cold. He did. He beat Aaron Rodgers' team up there. He beat Brett Favre up there. He beat Dallas in Dallas. He beat San Francisco in San Francisco. Won 5. Do you know how many guys in this league haven't won 5 playoff games? He won 5 playoff games against great quarterbacks, a couple of them, and some great teams in tough spots. And that San Francisco game, if you folks weren't old enough to remember that or you don't remember it, he took a beating the likes of. He got sacked 6 times. He got hit about 900 times. Kept coming back. And he did it in a town where it's tough to do. And he did it in a building where it's tough to throw. He didn't play in a dome his whole career. And if you don't think that makes a difference, go stand in that wind sometime in November in the Giant Stadium. For half the game, that's why you got to take Phil Simms' statistics and look at them and realize what these guys had to deal with in that building. Other guys would come in, see what their numbers were in November and December when they came in. Big time throwers, see what their numbers were. Were they playing against good Giant defenses? Yes. But see what their numbers were in those buildings. They had to play in those buildings. They didn't play in the sunshine and 70 degrees every day. They did in September and October, but they didn't in late October and November and December. Some of those days, that wind, it's crazy. So I think, did he have a regular season career that would get him anywhere near the Hall of Fame? No. But if you don't recognize his special postseason career, hey, there's only 6 guys who have 2 MVPs for winning teams. 6. in the history of the league. We're coming up on 60 Super Bowls. There's only 6 guys. The other 5 are all walk-in Hall of Famers. Most of them are immortal figures. Montana, Brady, Starr, Bradshaw. Sprinkle in Mahomes, who's going to be in the same. And then there's Eli. The company you keep. Makes him special. Larry, should the Giants make a play for Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp? Well, while they're at it, why don't bring McVay over too? Let's make it a troika. I like that. What do they want? The Statue of Liberty. Maybe throw in the Chrysler Building, Madison Square Garden, and then I don't think they want any Giant players, do they? They might take 1 or 2, but let's make it a troika. I don't listen. I think Stafford coming to Giant Stadium and coming east at this point of his career would be a serious mistake. Serious mistake. Coming to a rebuilding team with a coach who's in a precarious situation, I doubt is what he wants to do to finish his career. Is there a deadline, Shane asked, that Rodgers to return to the Jets? I'd like to see them not drag this out. And I would think before we open business in March, which we open business around the 12th of March, that's when you can start negotiating. That's when you can start meeting with free agents. That's when the league opens it for business again. I think it has to be settled by then. I think there's only one answer. You got to bring him and Adams back. If they do, if Glenn wants to go for the quick fix, and I know this is a quick fix, but I'm telling you, that team can do exactly what the Chargers did last year. They can go from 5 wins to 11 wins like that. If you gave me a C+ coaching staff, they win 9 games last year. If you give me a B coaching staff, they win 11 games last year. They lost 2 games because of kicks. They lost 1 game because of clock management. They lost 2 other games because of defensive breakdowns in the final minutes of play. They led 7 games in the fourth quarter that they lost. They could easily, without even a heavy sweat, could win 11 games next year, and he could throw 35 touchdown passes. He threw 28 this year, had 6 dropped, and the team didn't have a clue what it was doing. He was 28 and 11 this year. Oh, how bad Rodgers was. 28 and 11. How many times did Jets have quarterbacks with 28 and 11? He could throw 35 touchdown passes next year without even working up a sweat if they have an idea what they're doing on offense. And they understand sideline communication, and they understand how to coach an offensive line. They could, without question, get 35 touchdown catches out of him next year. And a running game. They're the worst team on 4th down and short that I've ever seen in my life. Don't even start how screwed up that team was this year. It's the worst coach team I've ever seen. When you take talent into account, that's the worst coach team I've ever seen. We'll see you Sunday night.